Namaste. Welcome again to our Bhagavad Gita series that we're going through regularly on a weekly basis with Madan Mohandas and a lovely audience. We have some great friends who've come round. It's been driven hours from Newcastle to come down and be here today for the recording. We're going to do chapter 4 today, and it's on Jnana Yoga. And it's going to start off with some quite amazing declarations by Krishna to Arjuna. And Madan is going to go through it in sections with some Sanskrit, not all of the verses, selected verses, and his poetic renderings. So thank you very much. I'm going to join the audience. And at the end of the chapter, we will have a kind of discussion and reflection on what we've, because there's a lot to take in. Hari Om.
Hare Krishna. Well, with the grace of Sri Hari Guru and Vaishnavas, we're continuing with Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. If you remember, in the last chapter we had the gradation of superiority from the senses to the sense, the objects of the senses, the intellect, the mind, and the self being superior. Anyway, without further ado, I'm being hassled by the director. I need to smile more. So anyway, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, starts off with Krishna's declaration. So I read the Sanskrit. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivaswan Manave Praha Manur Ikshvakave Bravit Evam Parampara Praptam Rajarshayo Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu Sa Kale neha mahata yogo nashta parantapa. Sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetaduttamam. This is Krishna's speech. So he said, Imam vivasvate yogam proktavanaham avyayam Vivaswan manave praha manurikshvakave bravit evam parampara praptam imam rajarshayo viduhu sakale neha mahata yogo nasta parantapa sa evayam maya tedya yoga prokta puratanaha Bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hetad uttamam. So then, I'll read the English for that. So the glorious Lord said, this yoga eternal was by me shown to Vivaswan. Vivaswan made it known to Manu, and from Manu, in his turn, the king Ikshvaku did this yoga learn. This yoga, handed down from ancient time, was known to wise kings in unbroken line. Thus, foe tormentor, yoga was conveyed, but in the lapse of time it has decayed. That same yoga is taught today by me to you, which is the highest mystery. This ancient knowledge I to you obtend, because you are my devotee and friend. Obtend is a literary word meaning profess or suggest, tell. So then, Arjuna replied, wait a minute, as if to say, Aparam bhavato janma param janma vivasvatah katham etad bijaniyam tamado proktavaniti. Arjuna said, much later is thy birth, O Lord divine, than Vivaswan, born in the ancient time. How is it possible to comprehend? 'Twas thou that did this yoga first commend. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Take that out. Excuse me, just a little adjustment. Make that more directional.
Okay.
Because you're going towards that, you're speaking.
I'm speaking that way. Okay. So Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. Bahuni. Now I'm going that way. Bahuni. Many. Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tabacharjuna. Tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veta parantapa. He says, O Arjuna, both you and I have passed innumerable lifetimes in the past. As for myself, I am aware of all. Those births you are unable to recall. Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishwaropi san prakriting swam adhisthaya sambhavami atmamayaya. Although I am birthless, in anticipation of the questioner, but if you're birthless, how can you be born? Although I am birthless, immutable, the ruler of beings, ineffable, yet, entering my nature, I take birth by my own will and manifest on earth. And then, in anticipation of the question, when? He says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyutthanam dharmasya tadatmanam srajamyaham. Whenever righteousness diminishes, when prominent are vice and wickedness, then Bharat, righteousness to suscitate, I do in my own person incarnate. And then in anticipation of the question, why? Paritranaya sadhunam vinasaya cha duskrutam dharma sangsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. The pious to reclaim and to destroy the wicked ones who cause such great annoy, righteousness to establish and attest, I make myself in each age manifest. Then he goes on, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupasrataha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha. So he concludes this portion. I do in my own... I said that already. And whoso knows this mystery of mine, the nature of my birth and deeds divine, leaving the body, is not born again, but does, O Arjuna, to me attain. Those from passion and fear and anger free take refuge and engross themselves in me. Purged in the cleansing fire of this wisdom, unto me thus full many souls have come. And then the famous verse. I'll read a few just verses now. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tang tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanu vartante manusya partha sarvasah Kangshanta karmanang siddhi yajanta iha devatah kshipram hi manuse loke siddhir bhavati karmaja chatur varnyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagasah tasya kartaram api mam vidya kartaram avyayam. So, where was I? In whatever way men seek me to gain, responsive, I their worship entertain. Thus, Partha, I respond accordingly, since men follow my path in every way. Those here who worship of the gods maintain fulfillment of their actions soon attain, for swiftly in the world from action springs accomplishment of man's undertakings. According to the three attributes, innate and actions, I the fourfold caste create. Though I am the agent, nevertheless I am immutable and actionless. So, there. Okay, that was text. I'm getting lost now. 13. Okay. Namam karmani limpanti. Name karmafale spriha. Iti mam yo bijanati karmabhir na sabhadyati. That's 13. 14. No action ever my being pollutes, nor do I cherish hopes for action's fruits. And who has knowledge of me thus in truth also remains unbound by acts forsooth. Kangsanta, no. Evam gyatva kritam karma purvairapi mumukshubhihi kuru karmaiva tasmatvam purvair purvataram kritam king karma kimakarmeti kavayo pyatra mohitaha tatte karma pravakshami yajgyatva mokshashe shubhat. So he says, knowing me thus, the men of old indeed performed actions in order to be freed. You too should act and emulate their ways, as did the ancients in the olden days. What action and inaction are, per se, even the wise, bewildered, cannot say. Wherefore, what action is, I will explain, whence freedom from all ill you will attain. So continuing on the same theme, karmano hyapi bodhavyam, bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha, akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. 'Tis needful to know of the distinction twixt action, inaction, and malaction. The ways of action's use, purpose, and end are very difficult to understand. Now, here we go. Karmanya karmayaha pashyed akarmani cha karmayaha sa buddhiman manushyeshu sa yukta kritsna karma krit. Who in inaction action comprehends, and action in inaction apprehends. Among mankind wise and attuned is he, albeit he performs activity. Yasya sarve samarambah kama sankalpa varjitah jnanagni dagda karmanam tamahu pandita buddha. Who, where was that? And whoever acts without hankering, disinterested in his undertaking, he is a wise man who with wisdom's fire burns up worldly extraneous desire. Tyaktva karmaphala sangam nityatripto nirasrayah karmanyabhir pravittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha. Casting desire for action's fruit aside, on none relying, ever satisfied, though acting according to duty's call, it is as though he does nothing at all. Shariram, nirashiryata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvannapnoti kilbisham. He says, unambitious and self-controlled and free, forsaking all his worldly property, no stain of sin in his action contracts, since it is merely the body which acts. Yadrichalabha santushto dandvatito vimatsaraha shama siddhavasiddhocha kritvapi na nipadyate. Contented with what comes by chance is he, from malice free, above duality, whom failure and success do not confound, equanimous, though acting, he's not bound. All right? Gatasangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasaha yagyayacharata karma samagram praviliyate. That was 23. So, who all worldly attachments has overcome, whose consciousness is established in wisdom, who acts for sacrifice and thus resolved, has all his actions utterly absolved. To him, now this is far out, I should read the shlokas. Brahmarpanam brahmahavir brahmagno brahmana hutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. Okay, so that finishes off a section. Some yogins, 24. To him, the offering, the sacred ghee, the fire, the priest are all divinity, who sees Brahman in all of them and knows his acts are in Brahman, to Brahman goes. Now, another subject. Daivam eva pare yagyam yogina pariyupashate brahmagnava pare yagyam yagyenaivopajuhyati Shrotradinindriyanyanye samyamagnishu juhati Shabdadinya vishayananya anye indriyagnishu juhati Sarvanindriya karmani prana karmani chapare Atma samaya yogagno juhyati jnana dipate Dravya yagya tapo yagya yoga yagya statha pare Swadhyaya yagyana jnana yagyascha yataya samshitabrataha Apane juhati pranam prane panam tatha pare Pranapana gati rudbha pranayama parayanaha Apare niyataharaha pranan praneshu juhyati Sarve pyete yagyavido yagyakshapita kalmasaha. That takes us up to 30. So where did I leave off? 25. This. Some yogins, devout pious votaries, in sacrifice worship divinities, and others to the fire of Brahman bring their devout sacrificial offering. The senses, such as hearing, some consign in worship to the fire of discipline, yet others the sense objects consecrate into the fire of sense to dedicate, yet others offer up with pious care sense faculties into the vital air. Through fire lit by wisdom without taint, they practice the yoga of self-restraint, and others who sacrifice their substance of wealth practice yoga with hard penance. Others, by Vedic study, sacrifice to wisdom, strict in their austerities. Yet others consecrate the breath inhaled in respiration to the breath exhaled, and thus the vital force within restrain and regulation of the breath maintain. And others who their diet regulate, the vital force and functions consecrate. All these knowers to sacrifice are fain, and by sacrifice are purged of all stain. 31. Yagyashishtamrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam nayam lokosya yagyasya kutonya kurusattama. He says, thus those who sacrificial food partake, to eternal Brahman their way betake. This world is not for those, O Kuru's Lord, who offer not what of the other world. Okay. Evam bahuvida yagya vitata brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhi tan sarvan evam gyatva vimokshashe. O foe tormentor, no. Thus sacrifice in diverse forms is made, and at the mouth of Supreme Brahman laid. And you should know they all from action spring, which, knowing, shall to you salvation bring. Now he's going to exalt knowledge, gyan. So, Shreyan dravya mayad yagyad jnana yagya parantapa sarvam karma kilam partha jnane parisamapyate. It's good, isn't it? So, O foe tormentor, wisdom far exceeds the sacrifice of substance and of deeds. O Pritha's son, who wisdom cultivates, in wisdom finds all action culminates. Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. To learn of this, 'tis meet you should repair, and with prostration serve with pious care, and question those who are in wisdom wise, and they will guide and teach you wisdom's ways. Yadyatva na punarmoham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutanya sheshena drakshashyatmanyato mai apichet asi papibhya. I'll read that one first. That was 35, because that's a good one. O Pandu's son, when this wisdom you gain, you shall not be deluded e'er again, and by this practice you shall plainly see all beings in the self in me. Now, he goes on, apichet, this means even if, apichet dasi papebhya sarvebhya papakrittamah sarvam jnanaplavenaiva vrijinam shantarishyasi. He says, I'm terrible at this, aren't I? Getting lost. 36. Oh yeah. Even among men of iniquity, if you the worst of sinful men should be, still in the boat of wisdom you may cross this sea of sin without nor scathe nor loss. Yathai gangsi samidho gnir basmasat kurute Arjuna jnanagnihi sarvakarmani basmasat kurute tatha. 37. As blazing fire that fuel does produce, the fuel consumed to ashes doth reduce. So, Arjuna, does wisdom's fire burn all actions up and into ashes turn. Truly, like wisdom, there is nothing here for purification that may compare. Whoso in this perfection does attain, in due time the bliss of the self will gain. The faithful, who their senses well restrain, unto this divine wisdom soon attain, and gaining this wisdom with perfect ease, without delay achieve the supreme peace. But ignorant and faithless doubters go to utter ruination, fraught with woe. They have no portion in this world nor there, nor can happiness be the doubter's share. But who disinterested yoga maintains, his doubts all cut away, wisdom attains, and self-controlled, O you who treasures win, he is not bound by action or by sin. Therefore, Bharat, through ignorance prevails, the gnawing doubt your bosom now assails. In yoga fixed, with wisdom's sword, cut down this ignorance, arise and win renown. Om Tat Sat iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishadsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Jnana Yoga Nama Chaturtodhyaya. That is Om, that truth, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishad of wisdom, consisting of the knowledge of Brahman, the yoga scripture, forming a dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. This was the 4th chapter, entitled The Yoga of Wisdom in Disinterested Action. Haribol. What do you think?
I think that
And
you've got something that you probably want to say before we even, like your reflections on it.
well, there were some really interesting notes that Sridhar Swami
Maybe
made.
explain a little bit who Sridhar Swami was. Just a little
Sridhar
bit.
Swami, the 14th century Vaishnava saint, commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita and Vishnu Purana. Most authoritative commentator, the commentator. So he says, I marked off some bits in his commentary to what we just read there, and whether it makes it clearer or not, I don't know. It might raise more questions.
That's okay.
So, having to refute partiality in the deity, right? So in the 4 verses we're beginning with, by whatsoever way men worship me, and having refuted partiality thereby, a topic which was raised by the way, in order to propound the way of action already mentioned, reminds by saying, thus knowing, etc. Knowing that work done without ego does not bind. The ancient seekers of liberation like Janaka performed work of yore, even in former ages, for the purification of the mind. Therefore, you too first perform work alone. Thought it was interesting. And what about the action in inaction?
Yeah, it's complex.
It is.
Well, we discussed it a little earlier. You've got to read Sridhar Swami's commentary on that.
No? I mean, we could, if anyone wants to read some, they can, or we could sort of recite the chapter through. Come, yeah.
I've just got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. That was incredible. Again, each chapter, there's one realizes why the Bhagavad Gita has been selected by all the great thinkers of India from every different angle, because there's so much knowledge and information and wisdom in it. The ones that are kind of stuck out for me in that chapter is the Ye Yatamams Prapadyante, which is a very, very important verse, and the Janma Karma Chame Divyam verse. Those are the couple that I kind of am familiar with. Maybe you could Did you want to say something on that, or?
Well, what I noticed is interesting about it is Arjuna's way of questioning. It's like he's still not convinced so far. As far as he's concerned, Krishna is his best friend, most intimate friend. Now all of a sudden, he's become the wise preceptor. So when he says, "I first taught the sun god in ancient days," and Arjuna said, "How? How is it possible?" Like, it's like, oh, leave it out. It's like that kind of mood in the comments, like, oh, get away. So then he has to explain that although Ajopi, although I don't have birth, I take birth, because it's what they call exquisite irony. You're getting it all the time in these texts, especially in the Bhagavatam. It's one of the favourite devices of exquisite irony. Do you know what I mean? Where it says, say, for example, the primal being addressed his elder brother, and it makes you go, oh. So there's all that kind of thing. So although I'm unborn, I'm born by my own will.
That Janma Karma Chame Divyam, that's Janma's birth, isn't it? And Karma's activities. Yeah. And Divya means, And I noticed...
the divine nature of them.
Yes. I noticed that the part of this teaching of Jnana is kind of Krishna's introducing himself as this person, and it's kind of upon him that one can achieve a kind of freedom from attachment by meditating on him. But it's also it's according to the proportion. That's what that yata. Maybe that's interesting. That whole I find that concept. I've always found it very, very interesting.
Yata mam prapadyante. But that's how he's expressing his impartiality. That everybody can approach him in whatever way they can, and he will entertain them accordingly. Yeah, and then a line that he also repeats later on was Manushya all men follow my path in every way. That's also repeated later on in the Gita, that same line. Men follow my path in every way. In other words, they're doing it whether they know it or not. They're coming to me.
Okay.
So he's impartial. So his janma, karma, his birth, his deeds, cha, me, etc. of me, divyam, yorveti. Whoever knows that, whoever conceives that, then they're free. They're leaving the body. Chaktva deham can either mean when they give up the body or when they give up attachment to the body. They're not born again either way. Mamiti, is they come to me.
Yes, because through the whole Mahabharata and up to this moment where Arjuna's accepting Krishna as his teacher, he's been his friend, and now all of a sudden it's changed this dynamic, and his friend Krishna, who'd been a cowherd boy and everything, suddenly he says,
very remarkable.
I actually spoke this to the sun god, and I've been around. I've been here forever. You only have to kind of like understand this mystery of who I am, and it's so potent that you can free from samsara.
You'll see in the next chapter 5 opens with the same question again. He says, again, Krishna, you're telling me two different things. Tell me one thing. So as we had in the beginning of chapter 3, the same thing comes up. So he's still like pressing Krishna. He's pressing him. His questions are pressing. How am I supposed to understand that? It's like, what? It's not just, from, like we get the impression from Sadhimam Tvam Prapannam. From that point on, Krishna is suppliant, all of a sudden. But it gradually develops over the text. And when Krishna has told him about his Vibhuti Yoga in chapter 10, Aham Sarvasya Prabhavo, everything comes from me, I'm the origin of everything, those who know that worship me, etc., etc. Then he realizes, then Arjuna, what's the word? I mean, in the ancient literature you would say he ejaculates. But in prayer, in hymn, outburst of Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, you're the Supreme Being, you're the Eternal One, etc., etc.
That's going to be in chapter
10.
Yeah, we just finished
Yeah,
4.
but it's not until then that Arjuna has that realization. He accepts it all now. So that's why he begins chapter 11. So I accept everything that you said. I want to see it now, and that's when you get the universal form. But anyway, we're jumping ahead of ourselves.
Do you have anything more that you feel you want to kind of say about the chapter, or are there any questions from the esteemed audience? Feeling anything? Well, maybe. Shortly, following this, next week we will have chapter 5 and the amazing dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna. All the vast subject matter and the subtleties and the nuances will be kind of gradually evolving and developing in the conversation.
Thank you.
Hari Om.
Hare
Hari
Krishna.
Om. Jai
Hare
Ho.
Krishna, Radhe Radhe.
Jai Radhe.